Hey, welcome to Kate's Crafts. I'm Kate. Today I would like to share with you a quick birthday card I made this week for a friend of mine. Let's get started. Here I have the Quilted Heart backdrop die in landscape from Lawn Fawn, and I have cut out some Yupo paper that I did some alcohol ink blending on last week. I recently purchased a kit for alcohol inks and picked up a few extra colors to try my hand at it. This is a new medium to me, so I kind of liked what I did, so I saved it, and I'm going to use it for today's project. So once I've got those hearts all poked out of it, I'm going to line this up on a backside of some white glitter cardstock from Recollections. It's a 65 pound, I believe, and I want to trace the panel around on this thing so I can cut it out and have a slightly smaller piece of it to go in behind, so that way when you look at the hearts are going to be glittery. So I thought that would be kind of nice to have the two of those together for the front of my card. So I'm just going to kind of slightly cut it smaller than what I really need. I don't want it really poking out, and I don't want to have to trim it. So I'm just doing it a few millimeters smaller than what I need. So when I've got that cut out, I'm going to flip that over, and I'm going to add some, I think it's Lawn Fawn liquid glue to the back of that. I'm just going to go around and put little dots along the X's and around the edges just to kind of make sure that that'll be secure. So once that's done, I'll be able to flip this over and line everything up. So I'll line that up on my make art station and kind of stand above it and line that up and mash it all down. So while I have that weighted down with some acrylic blocks, I'm going to figure out what my sentiment is going to be. I have this Say It With Stamps birthday set, and I'm just kind of picking out which little ones that I want to put with the larger birthday. This die that I have with it is something that I received for Christmas, and I'm assuming it came from Amazon. I don't have the name for it, but if you look up stackable dies on Amazon, I'm sure you'll be able to find it if you're interested in finding this one. So here I'm just lining up the birthday kind of in the center of things, and I'm going to pull out the bits to add on to it, which will be Hope You're, and then it'll say birthday, and then I'll have Is As Special As You Are. So I'm just using the die here to kind of give me an idea of placement and where I need to put everything down, because we're going to get a little fancy with stamping here. So once I've figured out which colors that I want to use, I'm going to take this scrap of paper and kind of cover up the birthday, because I want to stamp out the Hope You're and As Special As You Are in black soot distress ink. I don't want to put any black just yet on the birthday bit, because that's where we're going to do a bit of fancy work. So once I've got that stamped down, I can go back over it a couple of times just to make sure that I have a crisp image to work with. So I think that looks rather nice. And now I'm going to get the Wilted Violet in the distress ink, but first I want to remove those bits. So I'm going to just kind of ink up half of that stamp to get down the top part of the birthday, and I'm going to do an ombre effect with the purple and the black. So I'm just going to stamp this out a couple of times just to get that purple nice and crisp at the top. Kind of take it down just a little bit more, and now I'm going to go over the bottom half of it with the distress ink soot, or black soot, and that way it'll darken up the bottom bit a bit. The bottom bit a bit. Yes, the bottom bit a bit. I just said that. So once I'm done with the black, I'm going to take my microfiber cloth and I'm going to wipe that down a bit, and then I'm going to go over it all completely in purple, so that way the purple can kind of melt into the black a little bit better and give it a nicer finish. Here I have some clear embossing powder by Wow, and I'm going to clean off my stamp with the microfiber cloth and a little bit of water, and I'm going to use some Versamark ink to be able to stick the Wow embossing powder down to the Ombre Birthday sentiment. And while I was making this card, I was multitasking, and I had been using my heat gun for another project that isn't related to the card. And after I had poured all the embossing powder onto my sentiment here, did I realize that my heat gun wasn't turning on, so I had to let that sit for a little while so it'll cool. And while I'm waiting for my heat embossing gun to cool, I'm using a B59 marker to kind of go over the white spots in the alcohol ink mess that I made on this. I think the alcohol inks are kind of neat. I don't have any experience with them other than the little experiment that I tried the other day. I do want to get some more Yupo paper. It kind of reminds me of like when you would take your film to the photo lab to get your pictures developed, and it kind of reminds me a little of the paper that your pictures would be exposed on. I'm not sure what you call it, but that's kind of what this Yupo paper reminded me of. I don't know that it's the same. I still have to do my research on the Yupo paper and alcohol inks, as I'm still learning, as I keep mentioning. So now that my heat gun is cooled down and I'm able to use it again, I'm just going to melt the embossing powder on the birthday. And I rather like this, how it ties in together like that. And once that's cooled down, I am going to take my border die and I'm going to cut that out. And now that I've got that all cut out, I am going to piece it back together like a puzzle with some low-tack tape to hold it together. And this is just going to create a temporary border around it so that I can add in some of this Villanous potion. I felt that the edges were a little too stark white in contrast to the alcohol ink blend that I have on the card panel, so I think this will look rather lovely. Now that I'm finished with the ink blending, I'm going to take some foam tape and I'm going to go along the backside to prop it up off the card. I could have left it as is, the card would have looked lovely just the same, but I thought I'd add a little bit of dimension to the birthday card because it felt too plain or simple to me just to leave it as is, and you know, what's a little dimension, right? So I'm just figuring out which foam tapes that I want to use because I have two different brands and there are several different thicknesses in the foam tape and the size, or the width I should say. Eventually I want to stock up on the same brand of foam tape, that way it's got the same thickness throughout, but I make do with what I have. I think I got these from the dollar store because they're cheap and, you know, use a lot of foam tape for just about every card you have. So I'm going to take off the back sides of the foam tape and I'm going to stand above this and figure out my placement. I find that when I do stand above my project, it gives me a better perspective of where I need to be placing things. And even still, sometimes when I have this perspective, I need to kind of judge it a little bit and maybe turn it upside down, because sometimes turning things upside down gives you a different aspect of what you're working with and whether or not that you need to adjust your panel. Now, I probably could have put some glue on this, but I figured those lines would help me line everything up. And here I've got some gray cardstock, and I believe it's 110 pound. I forget the brand name of it, but I try to keep a bunch of this on my desk for when I'm making cards. That way I don't have to stop and cut out some card bases, and, you know, that just takes away from being able to create. So sometimes I take an evening and I'll cut out a bunch of different types of card bases, side fold, and whatnot. but I generally work in A2 size because I haven't expanded out into the other realms yet, as I'm rather enjoying the beginnings of this adventure with A2 size cards. And now that I've got some double-sided adhesive on my card, I'm going to adhere it to the card base to complete the card. Eventually I will add a little bit of embellishment in it, but I can't wait to throw this in the mail to wish my dear friend a happy birthday. If you've enjoyed today's content or found it helpful in any way, please give this video a like. I also welcome you to subscribe as I post videos weekly. Here's another video I think you might enjoy. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Take care.